Hello, hello, hello. How was everybody's weekend? Oh. Testing, testing. All right. Ready to make some money too. Think we're going to have some fun with GameStop this week. And if not this week, next week. Should be very, very interesting. My main watch, we'll get through the Meg 7 and we'll see what I think works out for a good risk reward. But I mean, for the most part, it's going to be a hot topic. Roaring Kitty hasn't gone away. He came back. He just tweeted, was a few hours ago. Um, so it wouldn't surprise me if GameStop is going to be on the top of a lot of people's lists this week. Also, Starbucks for some long term stuff is on my list. There's been a lot of money rolling into Starbucks, leaps, and even though I dislike the company, maybe it's time to take a closer look at it. So I'll take a closer look at Starbucks tonight, as well as the Meg 7. Does anybody know when um, Elon's package vote is coming up? Should be coming up soon, right? Don't remember exactly what day. Google. Let's see what Google can tell me. Annual meeting is Thursday for Tesla. That will definitely bring some fun into the markets. We also have CPI, PPI, I don't know, and one other thing too, FOMC this week. So we've got CPI, FOMC, PPI, GameStop, and Tesla. That's going to create some movement. So this is the Sunday night market scan. I am a Joe named Joe. You may call me Joe. This is interesting. This is the lecture, so be it, where I go over the Magnificent Seven stocks, anything else that I'm keeping an eye on. Today it's going to be GameStop and Starbucks, and see if I can get some sort of bias from how the markets are setting up the price action that's been there. Uh, I may or may not add a trade that I might be interested in onto a chart. That is by no means a buy or sell signal. This is not financial advice. You will lose money in the stock market. The stock market is risky. But with that being said, this should be a fun week. So let's get into it. We're going to start with SPY here. Now, SPY did a really good job last week, still pushing up, hit a new high, which is really nice. Closed above the previous high from this week in May, which was good. Got the close above. I'm assuming we continue up. Uh, on one thing because the other thing on my list is going to be Nvidia, and we've got the split taking place. And if I go back, let's take a look at the other big stocks when they split. So we'll look at Tesla here. I'll switch to a day. Where's that split? Over here. Here's the split over here. And you see how we did this? How Tesla did this? 4 days prior to the split, it went up. And then the day after the split, it dropped 12% over the course of the week. Okay. Google, pretty similar. Similar story here to Google. Actually came down in anticipation of the split, rallied up for 3 days, rallied up for 2 more days, and then dropped 9% on Google. So Google did pump a little bit after their split, but then ended up giving it all back and then some. And Amazon. Amazon rallied hard into the split for a week and then some, gave one big push up, and then corrected almost, it corrected 18% plus over the course of that week and into the next. So if history has taught us anything with these gigantic companies, when they split, there's a little bit of interest. You're going to get a lot of retails like, oh, goody, I get to buy Nvidia at 170 dollars a share, or whatever it's going to be, right? And then it gives a maybe a little bit of a push up, but ultimately it corrects. Okay, and we're already seeing that on Nvidia. Saw the price push up and then come back down on the daily. So if history holds true, and we're looking at anywhere from a 6 to an 18% drop. Let's get the info line. That puts us right around 113 to a possible gap fill down to around 100. Now, what I wanted to take a look at was also, let's see. Let's take a look at when Google did their split again. What day was that? That was Monday, the 18th of July. Let's check out SPY. Let's see what SPY did Monday, the 18th of July. It pumped. So Google had that nice big, a little bit of a push up and then a pullback. And while it corrected down, SPY continued up. So that's good to know. Although Google is not Nvidia at this point. Nvidia is now the second largest company, and they're worth an entire Germany now. So we might get a little bit more of a pullback. I'm feeling on the SPY, which is going to be a pullback for all the rest of the major indices as well. But that's going to be something I'll be watching. So taking a look at Nvidia, if it gives up these prior lows, call it 1174, which would probably be around 117 after the split. Uh, it could see some movement down, but it will be interesting to see if SPY continues down that way as well, because it's already put in a new high. 2 days it set that, it held it, it pulled back, and it's still there. It hasn't gone anywhere. So we'll see if the rest of the S&P can keep pushing forward while Nvidia pulls back. So my game plan for this week is to be watching SPY for a pullback with Nvidia post split. That's what I'd be watching. The price action is telling me it's bullish on SPY, but because Nvidia is so heavily weighted, I think it would be smarter to look bearish for a small move down on the SPY, and as well as the Qs, because I believe it's actually weighted heavier in the Qs than it is in SPY. I could be wrong. Maybe. So again, very similar to SPY, cleared these previous highs, close, feeling pretty bullish. We'll see if it gets a pullback into this trend bar gap. That's what I would be watching for a bounce right there. But we'll see if the Qs continue to go as well. Like this whole area right here for a possible bounce. Diamonds pulled back even harder. Okay. They're not hitting new all-time highs right now. They already pulled back. So the Dow is pulling back already almost 5% and bouncing. It looks like it may want to come back down. This feels like a bear flag. Let's take a look at a smaller time frame on the 1 hour here. I mean, that's feeling pretty bearish to me. It's feeling like a bear flag there. So I would watch the diamonds and the boomer stocks for a break of this down into this gap around 380, 378. Once again, I assume price will try to bounce there because that's the range that we've put in so far. So we watch that range right there. Broke above, came back down, bear flag. I think it's probably going to try that zone one more time. And we'll have to watch price action to see if it goes through or if it manages to continue to support price right here. IWM chopping up along here, but it is following the path. I think it continues back down. I think it's going to come down to the 180s. It's clearly taking longer than I expected for it to come down, but it is in fact coming down. So keeping an eye on that, keeping that short alive. I think we see small caps continue to come down. And if we're going to get a meme boom and inflation is still high, that's not going to be good for small caps in my opinion, because we're not going to see investors running to invest money into smaller growth companies. Are going to be putting their money into places like energy, utilities, and the larger blue chip companies and the boomer stocks that have proven themselves over time if inflation is indeed not getting any better. So I'm still bearish on small caps right now. Amazon got that big buy up last week as it pulled back off of those 3 weeks, put in this nice order block here. Uh, I'm still bullish on Amazon despite the fact that uh, Nando is bearish, but it did get that trend break finally and getting the push back up. This this is definitely a weekly order block that I would keep an eye on. These three down candles right here, volume imbalances in between them, all showing price moving rapidly and quickly, violently down to the downside there. Instead of just one gigantic candle down, it's got 3 weeks of price moving down with gaps. Okay, so we could just be filling those gaps before continuing down. But I like the shorter term. I like the trend break. I'd love to see Amazon try 200. I think this is probably also going to depend a lot on Nvidia as well. If Nvidia ends up pulling back the market, Amazon, I don't think is going to keep going. Apple finally pushing up here. It hit new highs. See, 196.90, 196.94. Hasn't quite gotten these all-time highs yet. I think it wants 200. I think people are realizing this was a dip buy opportunity in here. And so that short didn't pan out there. But we've seen it now take out these highs twice. Took them out on Wednesday and then came back and closed above them on Friday. So this is feeling very bullish. I think it at least wants the previous all-time highs, and I think it wants 200. I really do. Despite the fact that fundamentally, looking at their numbers, they're not doing nearly as well as the other Magnificent Seven or mega cap companies. So Apple pushing up here. I think maybe somebody knows something. I don't know. Maybe, they're just running it back up because they need to get all those stops to bring it back down. I don't know. I think it wants 200 within the next 2 weeks. So Google, the little pullback there, not a change yet in market structure, not quite a double top either. I think we might see some sideways movement within Google for this week, right in this area. That would be the place I would look for a bounce right around 169, 170 for a bounce back up into the 178s over the next week or two. But I'm assuming Google's going to sit here and just chop back and forth for a little bit. And that's what it's looking like it wants to do, is setting a range. I think it's going to chop. So Google's not necessarily something I would look at for a trade right now. Nvidia, like I said, I think they're going to come back and try and take out some of these lows and fill in some of these gaps. And I think we might get a pullback here as we go into the split. So keep an eye on Nvidia, which means some people would think that that means bearishness for AMD and other chip manufacturers. I actually think this is going to be good for them. So I would look bullish on AMD because AMD has been beat up quite a bit now over this whole thing. It didn't get that short. We were looking for that short. It reversed and came right back up. Tried to set a range, tried to break out twice, couldn't do it. Okay. I think we're gonna see the split create liquidity for Nvidia, which is going to cause retail to come in and buy up shares, which is going to allow the people that are up billions of dollars on Nvidia to dump their stock. And I think we're going to see money start rolling into companies like AMD. So keep an eye on that going into this week and the next 2 weeks. I'd look for a move over this previous week here. Is that 174.55? Call it 175 if you want. Look for a move over 175. Looking for some bullishness as it breaks out of this whole thing. So nice little consolidation here on the 1 hour. 4 hour here, zooming out a little bit. Got the nice trend break, the consolidation after the break, the breakout, the retest, the push up, the flag, the push up, the range. Now I want to see it break that range and push out again. Okay, so this is feeling very bullish on AMD, in my opinion. Looking pretty bullish. So if we see money pull back out of Nvidia, I'd look possibly long on AMD for a break of that range. While we're on the topic, we'll take a look at Intel as well. Intel not doing the greatest here, but very similarly to AMD, are putting in a range down here under these lows as well. Hasn't broken down even further, consolidating, moving sideways. I'd look for a continuation to the downside or the upside. Might see an upside reversal if we see a pullback in Nvidia. But the thing is, I don't think Intel is up to speed yet. I think AMD is sitting in a better position than Intel. So I would maybe look for a short on Intel into the sub 30s. But I would wait for a break of this range before getting into that. ARM is going to be something that you'd want to keep an eye on as well. There's been some big, decent money rolling into the 150s and the 160 strikes for leaps on ARM. And I think if we start seeing money roll out of AMD, I think you're going to see money rolling into ARM as well. Okay. Their margins are great. I'll take a look at, I'll show you the financials here. Now the statistics here on TradingView. Scroll down and look at these numbers. So their gross margin is 93.5%. That's ridiculous. And their net margin is 24, and it's only growing. Okay. Since what is this? Q4 of 2022. Okay. Their net margin has just gotten bigger. Got the little dip. Now it's back up to 24 where it was back here, where everybody wanted it at 150. Yeah. Now the gross margin or the net margin is back up. Their operating margins have fallen, unfortunately, but this seems to be an area where they go up and down, up and down, up and down. I would like to see some more consistency in those margins. But I think we might see some money start rolling into ARM. So I would keep this on your radar as well. Yeah, that's it for chips. Let's go to Meta. Broke this range. Very nice with the gap up. I think it's going to continue up. I really do. Um, I think Meta has the ability to move itself apart from Nvidia. So if we see a pullback in Nvidia, I don't think that's going to matter too much for Meta. Okay. Most of their income comes from advertising and selling people's information. So not so much from uh, the semiconductor world, although they have their hands in that. They're exposed to that. The majority of their money comes from somewhere else. So your Metas, your Googles, your GoDaddies, I don't think are going to have as much of a problem if we see Nvidia pull back the markets. Okay, we might actually see some upward momentum here in those companies. Microsoft also getting the nice reversal here, the pullback and now the push back up. I think it's going to want to try 440 within the next week or two. I think it definitely wants to try these highs again, and it might set a new all-time high this week. So keep an eye out for Microsoft as well. Feeling bullish on this. After this big dip down, they pushed up above the range, set a new range, came all the way down, took out the lows of the previous range, came all the way back up, took out the highs, then the lows again, and now I think it's going to try and pump. All eyes on Tesla and whether or not they're going to approve Elon's big payday. That annual meeting is on Thursday. I think we're going to see a lot of chop on Tesla going into Thursday, and then the decision will be made on whether or not the shareholders are going to pay that man his money, and I think that will make the decision whether or not they're going to roll with Tesla and run it up or dump it out. So I wouldn't bother trading Tesla until after that happens. What were the other ones that I wanted to look at? GameStop is going to be on everybody's radar this week, especially after the live stream with Roaring Kitty. He has not left. He is back. He was saying that the offering was a birthday present, you know. So keep an eye on this. There's been a lot of big money rolling into some GameStop, far out the money. I'm talking like 50s, 60s, 80s, hundreds, and like millions at a time. So this could be big. All right. This could be a big one. I honestly, just my personal trading, I grabbed a couple shares. I'm not going to put my money into uh, options with this because IV is going to be so jacked up. And I really dislike giving money to Theta. So I just grabbed a few shares. If that's something you want to look at, maybe consider it. But I mean, this thing could go nuclear. It has the ability to do it. And especially if it has hype behind it, it could definitely do it. Other meme stocks like AMC, I don't think have the ability because they'll dilute it. All right. The CEO has made it clear that there will be no upward momentum in AMC. It might get a push up. Well, if GameStop runs, AMC might get a push up, but I don't think it's going to go as crazy as GameStop. So that's just my personal point of view. Take it for what you will. There's also SPWR. This is SunPower Corporation. This is something you should also keep an eye on if you are looking to trade meme stocks. According to FinViz, the float for this is 11 million shares, and it is sold short 350%. I don't know how you sell short a float more than 100% because there's only so many shares that you can sell short. But if that is the case, this could definitely go if GameStop gets a rip to them. So keep an eye on SPWR. Oofta. Oofta there. What was the other one? Does anybody remember? There was something else that I wanted to take a look at today. S-Bucks, Starbucks. And yeah, I'll check out Zom here in a minute, Jaya. Now this, I mean, the chart is telling me bearish, okay? So it was putting in this wedge, right? Got the break to the downside. Now it's pushing back up. Looks very much like a bear flag. but I have seen some ridiculous money flowing into Starbucks. Uh, let me see if I can't find that and pull that up. It's a bit ridiculous just how much money is flowing into some of these leaps. So Starbucks, June 2026, 85 calls. June 2026, 80 calls. January 2025, 90 calls. And between those three strikes alone, there is there's about $35 million over the past 2 weeks that have gone into those three strikes alone. So something to keep an eye on. Maybe something to buy some shares and wait because those strikes they're really far out. They've got a lot of time. They're a bit spendy. They're over a grand a pop. Uh, maybe consider adding some Starbucks shares and leaving room to add if that is the thing. I'm not looking on Cheddar Flow. I'm actually looking on Unusual Whales. But all right, so yep, Starbucks something to keep your eye on long term as well. So let's check out the WBA bull flag. I mean, I'm seeing straight down. Talking this little thing right here, possibly. I don't think it gets too much of a push up out of it though. I would watch this imbalance right here, but still a trade nonetheless. Let's take it down to a bit more granular. I mean, I see it. I see what you're talking about. Like I said, I wouldn't if I were to trade this, one, I would wait for the break. And two, I wouldn't trade it any further than 16 and a half to 17. Anything over that is going to be icing on the cake. But this measured move right here, from the bottom to the top of this flagpole, is going to put us maybe around 18 and a half. But I think this is going to be a pretty large imbalance here. That's going to see a lot of chop. So if it gets the break, it's going to probably push up and then chop and then maybe continue up there. But yeah, I mean, it looks good. It looks good. I'd wait for the break and then trade the break. But yeah, maybe get some 16 and a half calls with time. Maybe that would work best, in my opinion. And then Zom. What you doing here, Zom? We got the long. That was nice. Uh, honestly, looking at this, I'm feeling some pullback here. Range has been set. It's been set back here. Now we took out the top and the bottom of it. Get back here. So there's where the range actually is. We took out the top or the bottom and the top of it. And now it's just kind of slowly pulling back down. So I would actually be looking at probably a pullback to 103, 102, somewhere in there. Zoom out to a month. Well, now that's a nice gap there. Little bounce up. Yeah, I mean, I'm feeling this is coming back down. I'm feeling bearish on Zom right there. Looking at that longer term. If you look at the 4 hour. Yeah. I mean, it kind of feels like there could be a flag here, but the structure just isn't really the greatest, in my opinion. I'd really like to see like at least three tags on the trend line, but it's just kind of wonky back and forth. So I'm feeling bearish on that. I could be wrong. It could be looking for a move up, but this price structure doesn't look the best to me, if that makes sense. Hood, Hood, I think nice dip there. I would, in my opinion, I'd take some longs out of here. I think this thing's going quite a bit higher than this. There's a lot of room to move up in here. And I could see this thing making some decent moves. At least into this gap around 25 and a half. And then it'll probably get some issues here in this trend bar gap here from the weekly, right around 32. But I'm feeling bullish on Hood. I like the company. I like the stock. Yeah, feeling bullish on that one. C, chop is what it looks like on this weekly. It's what it look like on the daily. Grossness. The push up to here and the pull back. Tried to break out of the range once and then pulled back. Yeah, what's XLF doing? In the weekly. Getting rejected by that previous high. What would that look like? 1, 2, 3 rejections at that price level. Yeah, I'm in some XLF puts myself. So I'm feeling bearish on banks in general. CCL, good old Carnival. I mean, long term, I don't. I I just don't see the value in this company, man. They spend so much money trying to get people to get on their boats, and then like it's not even the greatest. It's not even that great of an experience, you know. It's kind of annoying. But it seems to be putting this in here, so probably look for a push up into the 20s and then a pullback again into the 15s over the next 2 months or so. If you're looking at more of a smaller time frame, I mean, you can maybe look at some calls in this area. Not the great. I mean, it's right in the middle of this whole setup, so I would rather it come back down into like the 14s before looking at some calls. In my opinion, I don't like I don't like trading setups like this unless it's at the trend line. So I would trade a rejection around 19 and a half or a bounce at 14 or so. That's what I would wait for, in my opinion. Disney, I think Disney, unfortunately, is going to continue down. I am in some shares. I think it's going to at least fill this gap around sub 100 again. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it got that nice push up. It really did. Uh, but I mean, to put in the head and shoulders, the breaks of all the levels, the push into the gaps. Now we're under the exhaustion gap. It's Are we under it? No, we're in it. We're in the exhaustion gap after it broke to the downside of the range. So I mean, it's not in the greatest spot to trade right now. I would maybe wait until if it gets under 100 again, and maybe grab some more, or take some longs at 100 as a mental barrier. Plus, we got this consolidation back here and this previous high here, right at 197, 98. Call it 100 if you want, for that bounce back out. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know about any of you, but I'm not going to see their movies. I mean, I've got Disney Plus for the kids, but they're just not putting out anything that I really want to go see right now. And it's just not really getting me to go spend money. That makes sense. Oracle, I like Oracle. It's another stock that I like. I think it wants to return to 132. Don't know how long it's going to take to get there though. So I am in shares of this, but I am bullish on Oracle. I like their company as well. Taking a look at the weekly, we got the nice bounce right here at the 768, getting the push up. Really nice try to get out of this range. I still think it wants this high again. So I'm keeping bullish on Oracle. Socks, I think is going to be uh, down. I think it's going to get some downtrend with the Nvidia pullback, and then we'll see if money starts rolling into places like ARM and AMD and the other semiconductor companies. Because if that starts to happen, and we'll see the pullback on stocks uh, because of the Nvidia pullback. But then if money starts rolling into those other companies, we'll see the pull up. So I would look probably some shorts just because I'm assuming Nvidia is going to pull back off the split. Riot, I really don't like this company, unfortunately. Same with Mara. They're not following Bitcoin. So if we're watching these, let's take a look at Riot. It's down here. Like it hasn't moved recently, but if we look at Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's hitting new all-time highs, right? It's not down here. It's not down here in the 30s still. So while Bitcoin ripped up to new all-time highs from this 30 area, the 25 to 30,000 area, uh, Riot is still down in the 25 to 30,000 area. Like they haven't gotten up there. And since we're not seeing the price come up, I mean, that tells me that makes me question whether or not I want to put money into that, because I don't know what's going on. Why are they not following? Um, MicroStrategy, they did. They did follow. They got the breakout when Bitcoin was in the 25 to 30 range. They broke out to new all-time highs. They're sitting up there, right? Mara and Riot, nope, they're back. They haven't gotten the memo, right? They haven't gotten the memo, and I don't know why they haven't gotten the memo yet. Uh, some people would think that they're lagging behind, but for the longest period, they were right there with Bitcoin every step of the way. But once Bitcoin broke out of that 25 to 30 range right here, they pulled back, and they haven't been able to get out yet. So, it range, they're essentially ranged right here. Both of these companies, Riot and Mara. But I'll take a quick look at their financials here. I mean, where is this company making all of its money? So their gross margin is negative. Their operating margin is ridiculously negative. Their EBITDA is worthless, but their net margin is 267%. How are they making so much damn money on their bottom line when their gross margin is nothing? Like, I see that they've been growing here over these last quarters. So this negative number just keeps getting, I mean, it got bigger and then it immediately started getting smaller, right? But to operate at a negative operating margin, that's not good. Like that's so not good. Their solvency ratios are just at 0.01, which tells me that they don't have a whole lot of money to fall back on. I mean, their quick ratio is decent, but I feel like this has got to be all Bitcoin holding, in my opinion. Like, there's nothing else that could be. To have that ridiculously high of a net margin and to be operating at a 72% loss for operating margin, that doesn't make sense to me. Other than that, they have a ridiculous amount of money in Bitcoin. That's about all I could think of. And if that's all you got, eventually you're going to have to sell it to keep your business running, which means you're probably going to start going down because now you don't have that money sitting there on your bottom line. So, in my opinion, looking at Mara and Riot, I don't like them. I don't think they're doing well. There's something going on behind the scenes that's causing them to not follow Bitcoin when they were following Bitcoin move for move. And then when Bitcoin goes to hit new all-time highs, they're still stuck in the Stone Age. So that's my opinion on that company. Any notable options flow? GameStop, a lot of GameStop. UPST, 35 calls for July 19th. Someone dumped 500,000 of those into those on Friday, and another 86,000 on, or They dumped 500,000 on Thursday and another 86,000 on Friday. Keeping an eye on that. Also, another meme stock to look out for is PLCE. That company is also highly shorted and could benefit from a meme stock boom. The platform right here, this is TradingView, and I use it because it is free to everybody. You can go on tradingview.com and pull up a chart and look at it just like that. FFIE, yeah, very similar situation. If GameStop's going to rip, a lot of these stocks that are shorted heavily are going to rip as well. The thing with FFIE, they've already, I mean, they've gone through so many splits, right? So many reverse splits just to get down to here. Like this pop on the meme stock here was almost nothing in the grand scheme of this company. But I'm pretty sure they're still operating poorly. We'll see. I mean, your net margin is negative 35,000. That's not even possible. Okay. So this company is not reporting proper numbers, in my opinion, and is clearly being shorted for a reason because they're not profitable. Let's check out FinViz, and we'll see if the numbers have updated. They're only sold short 2%. And they have a 439 million share float, and they moved almost that entire float on Friday alone. So everybody now owns FFIE above 60 cents, essentially, because they moved the entire float here on Thursday, the 30th of May, and then they did it again on Friday, June 7th, almost all the float. So, I mean, I'm hesitant to get into a company that is clearly doing so poorly financially just on the idea of a meme stock boom and just because it's only 60 cents. But that's my opinion. In my opinion, if I wanted to get in on the meme stock stuff, I would look more at the leader, which would be GameStop, uh, not at the cheaper alternatives of AMC and FFIE. But I mean, if you got $20 you want to throw at something, go for it. That's my opinion. If you can afford to lose $20, why not? You might as well gamble it. You know. Any other notable the Starbucks stuff, the PLCE, UPST, Hood 25 calls are still running well. Uh, Lyft, I mean Lyft popped off and then gave it all back, didn't it? Yes, it did. So we saw that big aftermarket boom, and then it opened up here right at 17 and then just dumped it all back. Pulled back up again Friday and dumped it even further down. So not too much of a fan of Lyft. I don't think they're doing well. UPST, July 19th, 2024, 35 calls. They're right around 30. What was that at the close? 33 at the close on Friday. So I don't know where they're going to be come Monday, but hopefully a little bit cheaper than that. And I do believe the Meta whale is still in. Yep, the Meta whale is still in the house here on Meta. This ridiculous whale right here. The $208 million on the Meta 1,030 calls for June 2026. Ridiculous amount of money. There's no more questions. Feel free. Thoughts on SQQ and Gurn? Let's take a look. SQs are going to be, they're going to be a nice cheaper way to trade a pullback in the Qs. You could look at some, maybe some 9.5 to 10 calls. I'm not sure what the strikes rolling on that right now. Let's I'll pull up Weeble. We'll see. Um, but if we see, if we see a pullback in Nvidia, it's going to affect the Qs. And if we see a pullback in Qs, and the premiums aren't necessarily something that you want to trade, calls in SQQQ could definitely be worth a look at. So I'd be looking at, possibly maybe at least June 21, maybe 9.5 to 10 calls if we see a reversal in Nvidia, which I think we might see. So that wouldn't be too far fetched in my opinion. And Gurn, I haven't seen Gurn come up in a long time. They look like they just keep moving on up here. And then on the weekly, not so much. I mean, I'd look to probably take. I mean, it might get a little push into 5 again, but I feel like this one's probably just going to pull back. The history has shown us every pop gets sold into, right? Every big move up gets sold into, big move up, they all get sold into. So I would be looking, I mean, especially if it hits 6, I'd be looking to get some puts, in my opinion. CVS, bottom of the range, great spot to long, in my opinion. So we got all this support down here. Got that right there. Nice big range on the weekly. These multiple hits right here. I think it didn't even get the stop hunt. It didn't even get a nice wick down before it pushed up. But I mean, CVS is going to be a bit pricier, right? So if I'm looking at CVS, this is a weekly chart, not an hourly chart. So this is a weekly chart. So you'd be looking at something with some like a considerable amount of time, at least 100 days. So you're looking at possibly September's back up to like 100. I mean, that's not that bad. My only issue with those strikes is that there's not a whole lot of liquidity. There's not a whole lot of open interest in there right now. So I wouldn't want to get caught up in that. But maybe the 90s, the 85s, that wouldn't be a bad area with some time. Maybe get some more time a little bit out past September. But I mean, I this feels bullish. I'd like to see it move up because it already got the break down, the gap, the rejection, the bounce, the rejection, the dip down, taking out all these lows, and now we're building back up. Volume is here. Feels bullish on the longer time frames. And no, LFLY, no, I'm not going to trade this ever. I mean, look at this big pump up into 420. Is it 422? Then it just got sold into and dropped 50%. This feels like a pump and dump to me. It should be back down to sub 2 probably today. I would think maybe 140 by Tuesday. This looks like a clear pump and dump to me. But Coke, Coke, doing well. Hit that price target. Moving on up. This trend line might be a problem, but I still think at 165 at least. Glad that I finally got that price target. But yeah, I mean, seems to be doing quite well. Took out all these stops, bounced at that gap, pushed up, keeps coming up. Coke is something that I think, excuse me, one could easily get some time on. Like probably some October, the 68, 70, somewhere in there. The 67 and a half to 70s wouldn't be bad, in my opinion. Something to sit on, or just grab shares. They're $60 a pop. What would I recommend for a share buy? I mean, that's a pretty open question. It depends on what I'd be looking to do with it. On Coke, I mean, I think you've got a pretty good chance of holding shares at all times on a company like Coke. Even if you buy, even if I were to buy at 64, uh, and it dropped to 60, the value in the fact that I have shares of Coke is going to be more worth more to me than that monetary drop in share price. Because I know eventually it's going to come back up. It's Coke. It's what it does. Okay. Uh, so I think uh, if you're in a long term mindset, I think shares are good on just about anything that's a tried and true company. I wouldn't get shares on Riot because I don't think that company is going to survive much longer based on that chart. But something like Coke, I wouldn't mind getting shares on that and holding it for a while. MSOS, with the marijuana reclassification on the horizon, honestly, I think it'll probably just pop and drop. Legal weed doesn't seem to make a whole lot of money. And even if they reclassify it, it doesn't change the fact that it's going to be taxed into oblivion like it currently is right now. So there's not a whole lot of money in legal marijuana. And that's why you see companies like, CGC coming back down off that pump. See, Tilray is a penny stock now, or was. Look at that push up. I still think it comes back down. Sundial is a joke. I think that comes back down. Like, I mean, the grand scheme of these things, they're not profitable companies, right? So whether or not you get a reclassification, I don't think it changes the fact that these companies don't make money. So I mean, we might get a pop, sure. If you want to trade that, I'd maybe look at like 12 calls with some time to wait for the pop. But like, I mean, it's not a bad area too. We've got this low from March. I would rather look at the 6.5 to 620 area. But I mean, it's just not something I personally would waste my time and my money on because A, I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, and B, it's just going to give it all back anyway, in my opinion. So, till I recommend Best Buy. I mean, I'm not one to argue with Tilio. It is at the top of a range here, but I don't know anybody who shops at Best Buy anymore. I remember shopping there when I was a kid. It was super cool, but I don't know anybody who shops at Best Buy. So I don't know what they've got going on. I don't know what this big buy up was. Was it on earnings? Yeah. So I mean, they had a good earnings. It looks like, despite the fact missing revenue by 1%. There must have been some uh, data by loop. Your kids are getting pickier. I mean, when was the last time anybody in here spent time at a Best Buy? Probably not a whole lot of people. That's just my opinion. Abbott, I like Abbott. I like them long term. I think they'll do well. I like that buy up. I like it doesn't like the fact that they took out all these stops and then pulled back. I do like the fact that they're finding support and now moving up. This is a really nice bullish weekly candle right here. Take a look at the monthly. Also very nice. Got this trend bar gap right there. You got support. So you got a breakaway, measuring, and we don't have an exhaustion gap yet. So if we take a measurement from the swing here to here, duplicate it, move it out. This thing looks to be searching for 124. So I wouldn't mind taking along right there up to 124 and adjust my stop accordingly. Probably just under last month's low. Gives a decent 2.3 to 1 risk reward. So be looking at 123s, 124 calls. Checking out the options chain. This is a monthly, so maybe somewhere around November. 123, 124. Yeah, they're not that bad. The spread is horrible because there's not a whole lot of open interest out there, but definitely something to keep an eye on. I like that long. I think that could pay nicely. Um, I'm going to go down to daily here, see if I can find a better stop to lower my risk. And I think this area right here, bottom of this hammer, would be a good idea for a possible stop. That brings us up to 3-1 risk reward. Or I could just grab shares and get the 20 bucks in shares. So, and T. Watching T there for that break. Got the break with oomph, as they say up here in Minnesota. You got some oomph to it. So it broke that trend line and it broke it with volume and it broke it with a trend bar. Big move up, creating a gap between this candle and this candle. Right here. There's a trend bar gap right there. This would be considered our breakaway gap, just like we did on the last one there. Measure from the bottom of here to here. Duplicate, push out. Looking at 18 and a half, I think, on that mark. Might see some choppiness here, but I think it eventually wants to push up to 18 and a half and then probably go over, just based on how this chart was set up, based on how this move happened. Took out all these lows with one wick on the daily. Took out all these lows right here. Every one of those stops and then just ripped it right up. So I think it's coming for this gap here on the daily. That would, I think, 19, I think, would be the better option. Tesla is something that I wouldn't trade until post Thursday after their shareholder meeting, which is where they approve or deny Elon's compensation. I think it's just going to be a choppy mess heading into to Thursday. So I personally would not want to trade Tesla this week. I would wait for the news and see how the market reacts. VRT also one to keep an eye on for semiconductors, getting that nice pullback into this previous range, holding that range high right there. If it pulls down to 76, I'd be a bit weary because now you've got a left shoulder and a head. I'd look for a push up into the 90s for the right shoulder. So I'd be looking bearish if it pushes all the way down into the 76, 77 area. But if it can find support here and push up, I think this would be a good spot to take a long on VRT. Excuse me. Just also getting the pullback ahead of Nvidia earning or Nvidia split. So yeah, I don't really like this company. All right. Well, thanks for coming out. I appreciate you all. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to hit us up in the Discord. That's why we're there. Love to answer questions. We got a whole team full of people there that are willing to answer questions. So take advantage of them. Join the nightly lectures. Keep up to date. Keep your charts up to date. And we'll see you. All right. Take care. You're welcome.